Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Telework Triage webinar. We are excited to be joined today by Kai Andrews of Point B. And just a really quick intro about Movability, who we are, what we do, and then I will hand it over to Kai, who's the expert today. Movability is Central Texas's TMA, Transportation Management Association, and we work with employers all over Central Texas and help them develop and implement mobility planning, commute policies, and that includes remote work or telework, however you want to label that. We are obviously all finding ourselves in a very unprecedented situation right now where many employers, no matter what stage of readiness they were in to implement telework, are having to do it somewhat on the fly, and we know that can be very challenging. There are a lot of aspects of remote work that everyone is trying to figure out all at once. So we really want to help employers understand how to address their needs and their employees' needs right now, and then how to plan to make this successful for weeks, months, or however long they want to make teleworking a good tool for them. So hopefully you all had a chance to see the poll. There will be another one later on in the webinar. And you can hopefully also see that there's a place to ask some questions within this. Everyone is muted, but if you have questions, go ahead and type them in there. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Kai Andrews, Practice Director for Point B's Future of Work Practice.
Thank you very much, Kate. Hoping that everything is working here. Let me make sure that you can see my screen. I believe we've got that up and running. Let's move that over there. Fantastic. So welcome everyone to this session. I really value the fact that you were able to take an hour out of your day and come join us on this discussion about remote work. As Kate mentioned, I'm a practice director at Point B. What that really means, I've been here for a long time. I've been at Point B for 17 years. I'm in Seattle, and I've been involved in the collaboration space or helping employees work better for quite a number of those years. Over the last year and a half, Point B established our Future of Work practice, which really brings together what we call the 4 dimensions of work, which would be the human elements, the machine or business processes, your physical space, and your digital tools. Today, we will probably touch on all 4 of those dimensions as we talk about remote work, which is a core component to our future of work. So enough about me, enough about the future of work right now. Let's get into the actual presentation. And we're going to spend a lot of time on best practices. I'm going to try to share as many stories and examples and pragmatic things that you can do with you as possible in the time that we have together. I'm also, while we touch on some pragmatic things or things you can do to get ready for remote work, we have to recognize that many of us are remote. And because of that, we can focus on, well, what happens next? So hopefully you will find takeaways, whether you already are remote or whether you're about to move to a remote state. So let's move on here. The next slide I've got are just some quick ground rules for ourselves. Ask questions. Kate mentioned that there is a questions feature in the GoToMeeting tool, so feel free to type those in. I am a fast talker, so hopefully we will cover a lot of ground and have some time left at the end of the hour to review some of those questions and be ready to learn. Let's approach this with an open mind, and let's move right ahead into the topics of the day. So here's our agenda. We're going to bounce through 4 different areas. I'm notorious for jumping ahead, so it's quite likely that I'll cover some topics before we get to them, but all the better, because it means we may get to talk about something twice, and probably means it's even more important. So we're going to talk about preparation. We're going to talk about virtual teaming, virtual meetings, and then we're going to take a look and shift to what's next. By that, I mean what's next over the next couple of weeks, and what's going to happen as this ends and we finish with this remote work and we decide, are we pulling people back to the office or not? And so I'd like to just plant some seeds as to what companies and you as individuals can be thinking about as we move into that phase. All right, preparation. 3 things we're going to talk about: physical environment, tools, and most importantly, yourself. I'm going to just spend a few minutes on the first 2. I really want to get to that prepare yourself component, because we're seeing that that's the area that is most relevant to most individuals who are now entering a second, third week of working at home on a full-time basis. So let's go get started. What I have for you first is preparing your physical environment. Seems pretty straightforward, but there are things that we have to recognize. Primarily the fact that the location that we may have is not the same for everyone everywhere. Just yesterday, I was talking to a colleague. He logged on to the video, and behind him were hats and scarves, and off to the side, it looked like coats hanging there. Sure enough, he was actually working in a closet. 2-bedroom apartment, downtown Chicago, 2-year-old, 3-year-old nanny, wife working at home. It was the quietest space for him to find. And he felt it was the most productive space for him to find. So it just goes to show that we are becoming creative as to where we find ourselves in the home. Make it your space though. Make sure it's set up and you've got as much of the tools that you need. The other thing to consider there is try not to have it in your bedroom if at all possible. We're learning that that is too close to a space where you need to relax, and having laptops in there or spending your work hours in there, it does not allow you for that easy separation of work and life. Your internet signal is key. I mean, knock on wood, I'm looking at my router right here. Let's hope that holds up for this call. I've got kids video gaming upstairs. I've got YouTube streaming by teenagers. Who knows what else is going on in the house right now? Make sure you've got sufficient bandwidth as you enter into important calls. And then get your workstation and furniture in place as much as you can. Get a good desk, a good chair. This morning, I heard a great tip from someone. If you want a stand-up chair or a stand-up desk, use an ironing board. It's the easy way to get it done, but at least you get out of these seats, which I think is starting to drive some of us absolutely nuts, because we're moving from meeting to meeting and all we're doing is sitting down. So prepare your physical environment. Let's jump on to that next preparation step, and that would be preparing your physical tools. I mentioned them a second ago. It's great to have your desk. Make sure you're also equipped with a good headset, keyboard and mouse. Try to get that laptop lifted up. Use books if you have to. Try to get it at eye level. Not only is it good for your neck, but you know, that angle when you turn on your video camera, it's so much more pleasant. So try to get that straight on shot. And get those external monitors. Talk to your managers if you need to, and highlight the fact that you probably at work, especially in certain industries or job descriptions, had multiple monitors. It makes a difference. So make sure that that's communicated, because you do want to be as productive as possible as you're spending time at home. And then the last one, and I'm probably going to hit on this a dozen times, camera. Get your video on, right? Finally, rip off that tape on your camera icon, or your actual camera on your laptop, and turn on your video. Feedback is, well, we're overpowering bandwidth, right? Too much video right now. Okay, be selective then. Turn it on when you talk in a meeting, but really try to make as much eye contact and let people see you, because we need the human connection, right? It is so important for us these days. And here's the thing, we're going to switch gears again, and I'm going to double down on that human element, and we're going to spend a few minutes talking about preparing yourself. What we're seeing with our clients is that a lot of individuals are struggling with the daily routine of being able to just quickly get up and go to work and then be done and move back up to your personal life all in the same space. It's starting to wear down on us already. So here are some tips on hopefully making that a bearable thing as the weeks go on. First and foremost, dress for success. Dress up like you're walking into an office. All right, I put on a comfy sweater this morning. I made that conscious decision, but it was at least better than rolling out of bed in PJs and showing up for a webinar. So we figure, let's actually wear the things that make us feel like we are at work, and it helps you get ready in the mornings. Speaking of getting ready, there's another important thing. I was talking to someone the other day, and she mentioned that her husband was starting to go a little nuts, and we were talking about, well, why is that? Oh, I don't know, he enjoys the work still, he's fine working at home, but there's something wearing at him. And we found out that he used to bike to work on a regular basis. right? He had given that up. He could literally walk to his desk in a matter of seconds. And all of a sudden, the missing of that routine was critical. So he started biking again, and things got better. So whether it's a bike ride, whether it's listening to the radio, whether it's drinking your coffee that you would have done on a regular commute, honor those traditions, honor those routines, enjoy yourself that you don't have to fight traffic, but still hold true to the things you need to do to prepare yourself for work and ultimately roll out of work, right? It's super hard to just turn off the laptop, run upstairs, and start interacting with the family without that transition period. So give it to yourself. Another thing too is setting boundaries, primarily around working hours, right? We need to honor the fact that we've got hours where we're going to work, and we are working more so with all these virtual meetings than we've ever had before. Be done at that point in time. The circumstances that are surrounding us are putting stress on our personal lives. Dedicate your time to your family, to your partners, to whoever it may be that you can interact with. Give yourself that break. Don't work after hours right now. It's super important. During the hours, take breaks. We'll talk about roles that someone can take in a meeting in just a few minutes, but get out of your chair, right? Turn meetings into 25-minute meetings, 45-minute meetings, and take the break, walk around, right? We used to at least walk from meeting to meeting. We don't even do that anymore. So make sure you put those breaks in place. I've blocked out my lunch hours. I mark it as out of office for 1 hour, and I try to protect that time as much as possible. Give yourself that luxury. You deserve it. Set norms with those around you at home. Make sure you sit down and explain, hey, this is when I'm at work. This is when I'm available to chat, walk the dog, help in the kitchen, whatever it may be, run to the grocery store, whatever task is allowed these days. But set norms so people understand what you're doing and that maybe you're on an important call, and hopefully printers don't start running and who knows what else starts happening during a webinar. But also be accepting as you are a team member and you maybe see someone passing in the background, a cat crawling over a desk, laugh it off. These are norms nowadays in our household as well, where it intersects with our work. And then the last thing is to take time. Be patient with yourself, be patient with others. We are still adjusting. It's going to take us quite some time to adjust. So let's make sure we honor that. So just 6 things, hopefully, to keep a bit of that mental state going for yourself. And let's actually switch gears now and not just talk about ourselves, but actually talk about our teams. And so there's 5 things that we're going to talk about here: setting team norms, creating and sharing content, brainstorming, individual chats, and daily stand-ups. Each one of these is super important to keep our virtual teams intact. So first and foremost, set team norms. Well, your company is likely set some norms about what it means to work remotely. You can take those, and just like you've got your federal and state rules, this is your company and your team rules. Right? Think about what you as a team want to standardize on. Standardization could be the amount of time that you're going to spend at work. It also has a lot to do with the communication standards within your team. Think of it this way: how often have you typed a chat into a Skype window or Slack or Teams or whatever it may be, and you sit there and you wait for the response? We do it with instant messaging in our personal lives all the time. Why are you not getting back to me? Well, how about we set standards as a team as to what it means to reply to a chat ping versus an email, right? Let's use the right communication standards for the team and honor those standards amongst one another. Get everyone to handshake. Use a fun set of tools to say hi to one another, especially now that we are not interacting with each other physically, whether it's the Star Trek sign or whatever it may be. Have some fun in engaging with one another, especially at the beginning of meetings, right? We need to take those extra minutes up front to decompress from wherever we just virtually walked in from and what we're about to embark on. We need a bit of that human time. So get that handshake part to be a part of your meeting. Expect a varied learning curve. We all learn differently. Some of us have never used Mural as before. We've never used Teams as much as we are now, or Slack, or whatever the tool may be. Give each other leeway and recognize that we learn differently and offer up help to those who need it, right? It's fine that everybody's learning new technology. If there's a silver lining, we're pushing ourselves into a future of work that has always been sitting there waiting for us to adopt it. Well, now let's go ahead and do that, but it requires some learning. Meeting norms are super important, especially around how you want to show up for a meeting. We'll talk about this a little bit more in a bit, but the idea of a meeting is either a dial-in meeting or a content meeting. Set that expectation right up front, right? Isn't it fun when someone dials in or I dial in and then I find out that there's a really important slide that's going to be shared, or vice versa. I'm presenting the slide and people can't see it. Let's make sure that those expectations are set up, especially as we start to flex our work hours, which we'll talk about next. Look, there it is. Set expectations around work hours. Here's the thing. When we started on all of this, we recommended to a lot of companies that remote work does not equal flex time, right? You can't have the two be different. So let's work 8 to 5, whatever that time is. What we're finding now is because kids are home, because spouses, significant others, partners are at home, we're seeing a need to flex some of those work hours. Coordinate that as a team, right? If someone needs to work later in the morning because they've got the kids for a while or they're trying to get something set up at home, honor that and manage those work hours. Respect each other's limits as soon as those hours are set, right? We just talked about setting limits with people in your household. Same thing holds true for your team. Don't ping someone late in the evening. Give them the boundaries that they need. They may still be available because they're using a mobile tool now and you see their green status icon. Don't just ping them. Make sure you honor each other's time with family as much as we honor each other's engagement at work. And then here's an interesting one. Be mindful of others who are listening. My family's upstairs. They're probably tired at this point of hearing me talk about this, because this is not the first webinar that I'm doing or the first session with a client that I'm doing. So others will be listening to your meetings, to your conversations. Think about a headset or at least headphones in order for other people maybe not to hear, depending on what the content is that you're going to be talking about on a particular meeting. So there are some team norms, and I hope that helps in terms of building that contract with your team members. All right, we're going to get into a topic here that's near and dear to my heart, right? Creating and sharing content. I get carried away with this stuff. I love collaboration and providing people new ways of working with one another. And that anchors on documents. So bear with me here for just a couple of minutes. If you don't already have it, try to move as quickly as you can to an online document storage system. I don't care if it's Google Drive, if it's Office 365, but as soon as you make that move, all kinds of goodness starts to happen, right? You can share documents with links. You can work off of the same document with one another at the same time. Those are wholesale changes in behavior. At point B, I'm known for not accepting emails unless very rare occasions with a paperclip icon indicating an attachment. What do you want me to do now that you've attached a file? You want me to save that document somewhere and hope you never change it? Or even better, can you please provide me feedback on this file? Okay, I will, but did you realize you just copied 5 other people? Now you're gonna get 6 responses back. And if everything works out, you can coordinate those 6 changes at the same time, but likely you're going to be missing somebody's feedback. So let's use the cloud. Let's move to document sharing and let's move to simultaneous editing. I think it's a huge shift and just a much better way to work with our content. Here comes an interesting one. I like raising eyebrows every now and again. How about using folders sparingly, but not using them at all? Crazy, right? The idea would be that if you set up a new team and you've got your folders in there, those who have been with you all along understand, hopefully, why those folders were created or the sequence and of them being created. What happens when someone new comes into the team? They need to decipher the storage mechanism. Get rid of folders. Trust your system to find your content. These tools have search tools. And guess what? If you stop creating those multiple versions of documents, you can actually find content better. The other thing to do is to start to use the last modified date. Office 365, for example, almost all their document views are now based off of last modified date. It's likely that it's there. If you want, in your productivity tools like Word or Excel, you can pin documents so that they're always available for you, but just work differently. Don't even care where the document is anymore. Likely the stuff you will need is the stuff you last worked on, and then resort to search to find the rest of it. Folders are okay if you've got a good hierarchy like time, date, maybe part numbers or geography, something that everyone understands the hierarchy for. I'll just toss it out there to maybe try using it a little differently. So thanks for bearing with me on creating and sharing content. Like I said, I'm passionate about this space. I think there's great opportunity for us to work differently. Now let's shift gears to brainstorming. Look, we've all probably worked at home at one point or another, right? We're able to do a occasional call. We were able to create some documents. We were able to get our email. What about actual work in terms of teams getting together, brainstorming or working together? This is where whiteboard sessions really come into play. Here at Point B, we use Mural. It's a tool that allows for a very rich whiteboarding experience, multiple participants at a time. They've got great templates that you can use where you can start with a pre-populated whiteboard and then start moving the sticky notes around. And here's the beauty of this thing. Not only do you get simultaneous editing on this and a great brainstorming experience, but it's digital when you're done, right? Gone are the days as you're walking out of a room, taking a picture with your phone, having it end up in your personal albums, and then hoping to remember to email it out to other team members. And lo and behold, more attachments that nobody looks at. So right now is an amazing opportunity to move to these virtual whiteboard tools. If that's not available, at least supplement your meetings with simple note-taking, right? If you've got a brainstorming session, put your OneNote or your note-taking tool up on the screen, share your screen out, and let people see the ideas being recorded as they provide them. Here's another benefit to doing that live in a meeting, is that others can see the notes. They feel acknowledged by you writing down their ideas, and in the moment, they can correct their ideas. Right? If there's something that's not quite on target, now is the time to go ahead and have them say, no, can you fix that? And voila, another thing is gone. That lovely email after every meeting that says, hey, here's the meeting minutes. Can you please read through, adjust and correct anything that you have? Let's get rid of that. Let's just do it right here on the spot. So whiteboarding sessions, simple note-taking, just two ways to get that team to brainstorm together. I'll give you a couple more tips in just a little bit when we move into the virtual meeting section of this webinar. So let's talk about a different scenario. That's when teams are together and you're working. What if you need to tap someone on the shoulder? You need that quick individual chat with someone. Well, do that. Use your chat tools. Use Skype, use Teams, use Slack, use Jabber, whatever the tool may be to make that virtual tap on the shoulder happen. Here's the tricky part. Make sure in the mornings when you sit down that you've got your presence icon accurately representing where you are. Is it green if you're not busy? Is it turning red when you are busy? And so on. Sometimes those icons or those statuses can get stuck, so keep an eye on it during the day. And here's the last thing. I'm sorry, I'm going to give you two more things. One is start a tap on the shoulder with, can you IM? Do you have a sec? All right, especially if someone's red, indicating that they're busy, it's hard to indicate whether they're okay with an open door policy and they're happy to have someone come in. So a quick question like that, with then a yes or no answer from the recipient, that's it, the contract's done. If they say no, send an email or try again later. It's likely that they'll follow back up with you. But if they say it's okay to say no, and if they do say no, honor that. Don't send the question at that point. It'll only distract that individual and likely frustrate them that they can't get back to you because they probably appreciate that you've got an important question. And the last thing is the do not disturb status, right? Every one of these tools, you can put a good old red do not enter or do not bother icon, and that'll actually suppress, in most cases, those incoming messages. Use it sparingly. It equates a closed door policy. And while it's easy to forget that you might have turned it on or you need to turn it on, look frequently and turn it back off because we need the interaction. We need each other's availability. It's better to say, no, I don't have time right now than to deny someone access altogether. So make sure you think through that when you're engaging in individual chats. All right, daily stand-ups, another important part to teaming. So we're seeing companies everywhere do daily stand-ups, very often twice a day. Here's what's happening. In the mornings, give each other 15 minutes, jump on, turn on your camera, and go around robin. And this doesn't mean, what's your status? What are you working on? It means, how are you doing? What's going on? What's the next binge show that we should be watching? I don't know. I come up with ideas as a team and allow people to relax. Implement that water cooler mentality in your virtual team environment. So that's super important at the beginning. And what we're seeing is, and I'm not surprised, is an amazing uptick in virtual happy hours. If you have not tried one of these, do it. Don't worry about whether you have a drink in your hand or not, but what a way to decompress at the end of the day, right? And sit down and just have a conversation with someone and joke around, hopefully about something that is not work related, right? Use it as that virtual commute that you would have had anyway and have a conversation with someone. It is amazing what it does to your emotional anxiety level just to be able to go chat with someone after a hard day of back-to-back meetings, right? So engage in that. Zoom is a great tool. Even if you don't have licenses, you can have meetings for up to 40 minutes. And the beauty of Zoom is that you can have the gallery view take up to 49 different pictures of people talking. So obviously you don't want to have 49 people talking, but you can see a larger group to come together. So make those virtual happy hours happen. And here's one quick thing. Consider where your team is at. If they're international, shift those things around. Maybe you need to have a virtual happy hour in the morning in order to pull in Europe, or vice versa, depending on where people are in Asia. I think I have my time zones right. So make sure you get those things organized, flex your time a little bit to have a global inclusion program, and honor different societies too, where maybe a happy hour isn't quite the norm, while then come up with a different type of plan that may be appropriate culturally elsewhere around the globe for your teams. All right, drain that topic, right? Virtual teaming. Hopefully that was helpful to you. We've got 2 more sections. First, we're going to go into virtual meetings, and then comes that teaser that I've got for you, and that is what comes next, right? What do we do now that we are remote? All right, so back to virtual meetings though. Meeting readiness, participant readiness, meeting etiquette, engaging others, and what to do after the meeting. All right, so here we go. Meeting readiness. Here's the beauty of all of this. The things we're going to talk about here, they should be applied whether we are meeting virtually, whether we are meeting in person, or actually the most difficult way of meeting is a mixed meeting where you've got some people in the room and some people on video, right? We're going to be moving back into that other world eventually, so you're going to be able to take a lot of these things with you and apply them again as we move back into mixed meetings. I don't foresee us doing a lot of just pure in-person meetings, right? Cat's out of the bag with remote work, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So with meeting readiness, a few things here. Defining roles. Let me give you, first of all, the key takeaway is you need more than one person to run virtual meetings, especially large ones, right? Even as a presenter, I can't be watching the questions right now. I may need help sharing my screen. There are things that there may be even a note taker that you want so that I can fully engage into the presentation and hopefully the video component of that as well. 2 important roles that we're seeing that are popping up. One, the team workout leader role. No, we're not doing jumping jacks during the meeting, but this is a fun one. What if you actually had someone or a number of people on your team who can rotate through and at the end of a meeting remind you to go do something? Squats, walk up the stairs twice. I don't know, do something exercise-wise, stand up, anything just to get you out of this darn chair. So that's one important role that we're seeing and recommending for teams. The second one is what we call the Yoda role, or the sage role inside of the team. Look here, this is what's happened. Virtual teams make it really hard to read body language, to potentially listen for tone, especially if you are the presenter or the key facilitator. Assign someone on your team to be that listener, that watcher of the video to see if there's body language that the presenter may not be able to see. Listen for tone in people's voices and let that person or empower them to be able to speak up if they see something, if they hear something. All right, they're calling out the elephant in the room, so to speak, and it's okay for them to do that because we've lost the physical proximity to each other. We can't see each other's full body language, so let someone try to do that in a virtual state. Again, that's a Yoda sage role. Next one on the list is meeting structure readiness. All right, these are basics. Now is a better time than ever to revisit these basics because we're shining a light on meetings that are not set up well. Agendas, right participants, right content, the length of meeting, right? Just the fundamentals of just how to run a good meeting need to be reconsidered right now to make sure that we're pulling people into the right thing. It is way too easy to drop another 30 minutes onto a calendar because I don't have to find a conference room anymore. I don't have to worry about where we're meeting. I just join via the tool. Sure, it's another 30-minute meeting. And I can show you my calendar. I'm sure yours looks the same. They're stacked from beginning to end, and it is exhausting. So let's make sure meetings are called when they're needed. Make sure that you have the right tools. We talked about bandwidth, the laptops, the headsets, the camera. There it is again. Make sure you've got those right tools set up to make it an effective meeting. Centralize your meeting content. Again, don't send attachments of agendas. What if you actually create a team space where the meeting is going to be? You can attach the agenda right there. In a team, create a separate channel, and you're able to just have that as the standing meetings, attach a OneNote, and have the meeting minutes in there. So centralize. Don't make people go to multiple places to go find their content and get ready for a meeting. Presentation considerations. Make sure you're ready to share your desktop. Make sure the content that you're sharing is shareable, not a lot of text. Images right now, lists like this one right here are super important as you're getting ready for your presentation, right? And make sure that you get ready to or turn off your notifications as well, or your other distractions. Shut down Outlook, turn off your second monitor, whatever it takes to focus on what you're about to do. Coordinate the flow ahead of time. Make sure your presenters know how to hand off to one another to try to avoid those awkward, can you see my screen? Can you hear me? All right, let's get all that figured out ahead of time and make sure the flow of the meeting is very, very good. And then communicate join expectations. I spoke about this at the very beginning. Is this a dial-in meeting? Is this a I need to be in front of my computer meeting? Let's be clear about that. It's going to make the experience for everyone all the better. There you go. I got ahead of myself. Content and sharing readiness. Be ready with that. One thing I hadn't mentioned yet was close other windows. Close that Excel spreadsheet with the payroll numbers in it. Close down your email where you might have sensitive information because you will go rogue during certain meetings and you'll be like, I can share that with you. Hang on, I've got it here somewhere. Well, be careful when you say I'm going to shift off of my main presentation, what's underneath it. So be ready for that. A nice thing is some of the more modern tools like Microsoft Teams, unlike Skype for Business, when you share, you can share an application. And when that application is shared, even if you have things in front of it, it doesn't block out the screen. So it allows you to be very careful as to what you're sharing on your particular desktop. And then plan breakout sessions. So this is important that if you're going to have smaller groups break off and then come back in a meeting, that they either have a team session set up or a different Zoom breakout session, or they can just break into a sub chat and then pull them back together again. So make sure you've got the logistics figured out as to how you're going to have smaller teams work together. All right, meetings are ready. How about getting your participants ready? I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I think we've hit on these. Make sure they have their technology ready, especially for those who are leading and participating. Eliminate the distractions. I just spoke to that, right? Making sure you've got your phone turned off, you've got your notifications not coming in. All computers should have a do not disturb feature. Turn it on during your meeting. Then you don't have to worry about closing a bunch of stuff down. The computer just knows, don't disturb you at this point. Here's the real tip. How about keeping that on, right? How about not getting disturbed by those things when you're trying to focus on some work during the day anyway? Give yourself the time when you need to jump back in and be distracted by your email. And oh, hey, there it is again. Use video. Didn't we already talk about that one? Get your video on. And again, if people are worried about bandwidth, at least turn it on when you're talking. And remember where the video is. This is especially important when we move back to mixed meetings and you're sitting in the conference room. Come on, we've all been online and you've been watching like from the God view up above, looking down at the conference room of everybody sitting at the table, and whoever is talking, you see the back of their head because they're talking to the people in the room. Remember where your audience is and try to make that eye contact. All right, couple more. Promise you we're in the home stretch here because I need some water here in a minute, that's for sure. Leading virtual meetings, meeting etiquette. I get two responses to this slide. The eye roll of, oh, come on, I know how to run a meeting, or the, wow, yeah, these are actually good things to remember because like I said earlier, you want to be able to do these even when we're outside of virtual meetings. So let's go through these really quickly. Introduce your presenters, especially the phone numbers that are on the dial-in. Announce the guidelines that you're going to have on the call, why we're here, what we're going to do, how to participate. Announce the roles that are going to be played by individuals. If you have a sage role in your meeting, announce who that person's going to be, because if they do speak up with an observation, people don't come down on them. Video first. What is that? 6, 7, 8 times I've mentioned video now. Make sure it's turned on. Get those distractions gone. Explain your question avenue, just like we did at the beginning of the webinar. Where can I write down questions? What we're seeing is an amazing uptick in the chat or chatter that happens inside of meetings. We'll talk about that in just in a minute, a little bit further. Recording etiquette. Let people know when meetings are being recorded. Most tools these days, they give you a big warning that you can't get around to let people know that you're recording a session. But make that happen. If you are going to record something, here's a key takeaway. Let people have the time to go watch the recording when you're done. It's so easy to say, okay, it's fine if you miss the meeting, watch the recording, and then no time allocated to doing that. And mute reminders. This was beautiful. I recorded a webinar the other day, or no, it was a podcast. I can't even remember which, and I forgot to take myself off of mute. You can find it. It's actually living into posterity's sake, whatever the saying is. It's out there on the Point B COVID-19 site, and you can watch me just talk away without any audio. It's awesome. So remember how to unmute, and also ask the audience to mute before you get going. All right, engaging others. 3 things here. Encourage engagement. This is the hard part. We're not in a room together. Acknowledge who's on the call. Remember, I just mentioned those phone numbers. Ask who the phone numbers are so that we know everyone who's available. Feel free to call on folks in the meeting. And if there's going to be a lunch break or something, acknowledge that either we're going to just take time off, we're going to mute, turn off video, and we're going to come back, or figure out how to engage people during those breaks. Again, this one's super important when we move back to mixed meetings, when we have people in the room rustling their lunches, laughing and having a great time, and you've got a few people sitting there on the camera looking down, wishing they could be part of the fun. Don't forget your audience, even during breaks. All right, so get that engagement going. One tip we got yesterday was, how do I call on people, or how do I go round robin if I have a lot of people in the call? How about you just open up the participant list? It should come up in a separate window in every tool, and just start top to bottom. If you can see everybody on video, start going clockwise around the video. Right? Give yourself some rhyme or reason as to how you're going to call on people if you need input. All right, engaging participants via chat. This one's key. So Point B, we just had our sales summit meeting a few weeks back. It was supposed to be an in-person meeting of 100 people plus here in Seattle. and we decided we had to move it to a virtual state in a matter of several days. So in a couple of days, our entire team moved to virtual, and it was a smashing success. One of the biggest takeaways was the chat window. The back of the room chat all of a sudden expanded to more people. That people were engaged. Sure, we got some jokes going, but people were posting GIFs and other emojis and all kinds of fun stuff. They were actually engaging with one another as much as they were listening to and engaging with the audience. Plus, they were asking questions, and we had a moderator for those questions, right? In the meeting, someone was able to respond while the presentation continued. It just it elevated the meeting away from a slideshow to an engaged slideshow. So think about that. Get people to use the chat and moderate it. Pause frequently. I am one who does not have a pause button, but if you have others, make sure you pause, let the questions be asked. We'll hold questions for just a little longer. Have your multiple monitors ready. In chat, you can have a chat over on one side. You can have your main presentation on the other. So it's okay to be looking back and forth and use those multiple monitors to see what's going on in the meeting while you may be presenting the key information. And honestly, encourage creativity and participation. I just gave you the example of the Point B situation with our sales summit. That's exactly what we're looking for. Give people the freedom to engage and have some fun. And then back to the whiteboards. Look, we talked about virtual whiteboards, right? So we've got those tools available to us. When we are back in meetings, room meetings, and there is a physical whiteboard, and someone starts drawing on it, a lot of camera systems allow you to pan, tilt, and zoom. Get your camera pointed at what the person's writing on. If you can't do that, move a laptop and move the laptop camera so it's pointed to that particular whiteboard so people online can see it. They can then pin that part of the video and it'll just stay there and they can see what's happening and what's being written. And here's a quick tip and trick. On ad hoc whiteboards, don't have any of these tools, do this. Open up PowerPoint. Well, okay, if you're on Google or, if you're on G Suite or if you're on Office 365, open up either a PowerPoint or a Google presentation, share it amongst those in the room, have them join, and everybody has a white canvas that they can work on. Create a yellow little shape square that you can type in, voila, automatic sticky notes. And you've got a whiteboard without having to go to any other tools. Not as ideal, but it certainly helps you out in a pinch. All right, last thing, after the meeting. Record important meetings so that people who miss it can get that relevant information. Like I said, make sure they have time. Take good notes. We talked earlier about putting those notes front and center on the screen in OneNote or whatever tool it may be, and then you can post them immediately after the meeting. But how powerful is it for people to see the notes while you're taking them? And then assign action items. Transfer your to-dos from your notes into a task tracking tool. For those of you who are in OneNote, you can search for tags. Give a search for the to-do square. I bet you'll find hundreds of them out there amongst all your notebooks. Have those ever been done or tracked? Move them into a central tracking tool. So just a couple of quick tips after the meeting to make sure it closes out just as well as what you started. All right, here we go. One more topic, everyone, before we move over to the questions and answers and we all get on with our day. Look, here we are. We are remote. I am sitting in my home office. Now what? What's next? I'm going to put one slide up and speak to some of these key points. There are things we need to think about in the near term, and there's going to be things for the long term. So here we go. Bear with me for a second. I'll orient you to the slide. So there's two rows. One, what's probably going to happen over the next 2 to 3 weeks? And then what happens when we go back to work? Or when we decide to open up our offices, we are at work. So it's more what happens when we have a physical space to return to. Those are the two rows of the things we see. And then there are 4 columns here. Seems like an eternity ago when I introduced myself, I mentioned the future of work. I mentioned that there were 4 areas of the future of work. That's what these 4 columns represent. There's the human elements, the machine that runs our business, the physical space that represents where we do the work, and the digital tools of the work, of the things we use to get our work done. And what we see are things happening across these 4 dimensions, both right now and moving forward. You guys can read. This deck will be available. Let me just point out some of the key elements on here. Next 2 to 3 weeks, mental impact management. Help yourself by addressing those getting yourself ready tips that we talked about. Help managers, or managers help yourselves to engage with people on that human level. Let people know that you care. Have more frequent one-on-one reach outs. Set up those virtual happy hours. Right now, we have to lean into the human element, and what we're seeing with so many clients and so many conversations I'm having is that people are struggling with that, right? They're struggling with that separation of church and state, work and life, personal life. So let's help them along with that and really work on that right now. Here's another one under the machine. What happens with month-end process? What happens with quarter-end process? We're about to hit a very important time frame over the next 2 weeks where the month of March is going to come to a close and the first quarter of the year is going to come to a close. Some companies might even be a fiscal close. Have you ever had to do these things in a fully virtual environment? Here's what needs to happen. First of all employees should be thinking about this. And as leaders, managers, department heads, challenge your employees right now and say, over the next week, what are things that you've never had to do before? And let us know, let leadership know where you see potential gaps or challenges. Don't let people suffer in silence. Ask them now for help, right? Be open, let them not, this is not a time to judge. And once you get the feedback, get pragmatic of how to solve those problems. Maybe it's a tool you already have. Maybe another tool needs to come into play. Digital signatures, document approval routing. I don't know. There are tools that you can do, and there may even be workarounds for some of these things. Get pragmatic. On the physical front, we continue to redefine our space. Space may be the backyard to start getting some fresh air as the weather turns nicer. Be accepting as people move about in their physical space to try to find a bit of change. And then we are going to continue to see tool adoption here in the next few weeks as people are being pushed into more and more different tools. Look at that, I didn't follow my own rules. Didn't turn off my notifications. Don't you love that? All right, and then what happens? Look, all things will end. This will end. We will have our offices back. We will come back to a state of quote unquote normal. Here are some things to start thinking about now, right? We've got our workers at home. Yes, there are still other pressing things around fiscal continuity, but we can also think about what happens next. A CIO said, we rang the bell to remote work. How do we unring it? Or we can't unring it. So what happens now? Do we force everyone back into an office? Do we amend our policies and allow people to work from home more often? How is that cultural shift? Is that going to impact a cultural shift in our organization? Right, so it's super important to think through what we're going to do as we move back into the opportunity to have an on-premise work environment. It also impacts workforce strategy. We could potentially now source anywhere, especially if we've never had a remote work practice before. We can do it. Find the best talent anywhere in the world. On the machine side, formalize all of these amazing workarounds that your employees are probably coming up with right now. If you are one of those people coming up with those ideas, elevate them to your managers. Let them know about, look, I found a better, faster way to do these things. Measure productivity. All these things to lean into and say, we can be better. We've learned things. Let's not forget them as soon as we go back to our offices. Speaking of offices, space design and optimization is key. If our offices are empty, let's think about how much of them we need when we go back to work. Do we need to build a new office tower that we were planning? Can we go to a hoteling strategy? Let's think about those physical workspaces. And then last but not least, the digital tools. Many companies were helping them move very quickly in a matter of days to cloud-based solutions. That's great for the immediate near term. Let's get this done and give people the tools they need. We need to take a moment to breathe at the end and say, wow, do we still need those? Can we get rid of some of the old stuff that we stopped using? Right? Is there a wholesale migration? How do we rationalize our tool space? So these are just some of those things that we can think about as we move into the next phase. And that's really what I've got for y'all. I've got one slide here I'm going to show. It is the Q&A slide. I'm going to switch over. I'm going to look at my other monitor. If you guys can see me, I'm going to expand the questions window, and I'm darn curious. Oh, nothing. At least I don't see them. So maybe there are some. And if Kate or Christopher, if you guys can point me to whether I'm missing something on how to see the Q&A, I'd love to open it up for a couple of minutes. If anyone has some questions, I'd
Yeah.
be happy to answer them.
All right. Thank you, Kai, for all of that. And I think we're practicing what we preach, right? And learning this as we go. So I have two questions that I can see. I will just read them to you and you can tackle them. The first one is, I think in a lot of people's minds, with so many schools closed, many people are working with kids at home and helping with school-related activities. Any tips for parenting while working or working while parenting?
Acknowledge that you need to do both at the same time and set the team norms that there are going to be kids around. I think it's, sure, you need a focus time in a specific meeting. I see it as normal and totally accepting when a child walks up and is curious, right? You see the little head leaning in, wanting to see who's on the screen. Say hi. Acknowledge that the kids are there. This is just an intersection, an unprecedented intersection of work and life right now. It's great if you've got the help where you can ask someone in a specific meeting or period of time to say, hey, I need this right now, and can you help take care of the kids? But for the most part, it's okay. One of my colleagues, you can see her kids at their makeshift school table behind her. That's just the way it is right now. We have to accept that. And that's probably the biggest tip right now, Kate, is it's okay. And it's okay potentially to even flex some hours if you need to, so that you can take care of the kids and keep their education moving forward as well.
All right, thank you. And then a second question for you. What software do you recommend to share documents with a multi-generational staff?
The multi-generational question. Did you guys know it's the first time ever 5 generations are in the workforce? Crazy. It is not about the tool so much as the other thing I mentioned earlier, which was the time. So, like I said, there's 2 primary suites that are out there. You've got the Google G Suite, you've got the Microsoft Office 365. When it comes to holistic collaboration suites, you can pick individual tools too, right, that have some sort of content management built into them. The biggest thing to consider is giving everyone the different amount of time that they need to do the work in these tools. When you see attachments coming in from someone who may be having a hard time to adjust, set up a call with them. Explain to them the benefits of doing it and walk them through it step by step as to how it actually works. And when they forget, meet with them again. And when they need a little bit of a refresher, meet with them again. That time element, as much as I just mentioned that it's important with the family and your personal life, it's just as important to spend that time with your team and work together there. One other quick tip that I do have is if you look at these tools, sometimes they can be overwhelming, right? Let's take a Microsoft Teams environment. Holy cow, there's chat and there's posts and there's files and there's too much to do with all of that. Well, what about someone who doesn't want to learn all of that or doesn't even need to? What if you help them just set up a simple sync so that then when they use Windows Explorer or a Mac Finder, their files are right there. Those are the same files that everyone else is sharing. You can show them how from within the safety of Windows Explorer or Finder, you can right click on a file and share it. Like take it down to the lowest common denominator and just get them familiar with a couple of new clicks as opposed to showing them a whole new tool. So Kate, there's some ideas. I could probably go on for a while, but I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. Any other questions?
Yeah, there's one more that just came in. Is there a general guideline for, oh, I'm sorry, 2 more, Kai.
All right.
Is there a general guideline for how much bandwidth I should have at home to support multiple computers, myself, spouse, kids, to be on video sharing at the same time?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't have the exact number. I know that our Comcast system here at home, I think I measured it the other day and we were at 300 megabits per second. And knock on wood, I've only had one webinar where I've seen drop. That, by the way, allows for some serious online gaming upstairs. I know the other two are likely doing YouTube streaming, and I've got these chats going. So I know that there are numbers out there. I would just honestly do a quick Google search, and then I think you have to be at 100 megabits per second or higher would be my recommendation at a minimum.
Okay, great, thank you. And then last question, do you recommend working with your team together to develop the to-do list and measuring the production so they are all in and understand expectations for production?
Yes. I'm so glad someone asked that question, because I realized as I was going through the deck, there was a point of measurement that I didn't talk enough about. When I was talking earlier about people struggling to engage at work, or they're starting to see those mental cracks, mental fatigue, measurement is one of the key things that can help with that. And I'm not talking about becoming so metrics driven that it's like, well, you didn't respond to 58 emails today, or whatever the metric may be. But if you measure some sort of output and you work with your team in developing that output, it gives a lot of people a sense of purpose and being, by being able to point at something and saying, I did that, right? And before, I knew I was doing good work because I went to work. I was there. I was engaged. I'm pretty sure I was doing good work. Now that distinction is blurred, and employees and managers are dealing with that. A lot of managers deal with a butts and seat point of view. If I see you, I know you're working. But have we really ever measured what, from an employee perspective and a manager's perspective, we really want to do? So now is that time. Go figure out what's important, how to measure those metrics, and take them with you back to the physical office when that happens. It just means everyone has transparency as to how we're doing, what the work is that we're getting done, and most importantly, that we're actually working on the right thing. So there you go, Kate. Quick summary of that one.
Excellent, thank you so much. I think we're all good. Kai, are there any last points you want to hit on before I say a quick goodbye?
Stay safe out there. Try to embrace as much as possible this unique world that we are in right now. I know it's hard. I know it's scary. We have to continue our work, and I think we're going to learn new ways of interacting with one another. I'm not talking we're going into some kind of Ready Player One VR world, but it certainly is shifting our work. So stick with it. Please reach out if you have any questions whatsoever. I'd love to talk more. And Kate and Movability, thank you so much for having us here today, and also for hosting this. I hope everyone found a ton of value in this.
Well, thank you so much for collaborating, and I hope I echo what Kai said. I hope this was useful for folks, and would like to remind those of you in the, in the Central Texas area, if you would like some customized help, either with telework or other mobility options, please reach out to us at Movability or movabilitytx.org. My name is Kate Harrington. I'm the Outreach and Engagement Manager there, and Point B is a valued member of Movability, so you'd be in good company. And thank you all.